The December sun poured through the glass towers of Los Angeles, gilding the skyline in deceptive warmth as the world beneath it trembled with secrets too heavy for daylight. In the heart of that world stood the intertwined lives of the Forrestus, the Spencers, and the Logans, three dynasties bound not by blood alone, but by betrayal, ambition, and the fragile illusion of love that had kept them tethered for decades. The latest tragedy, the death of Luna, had not merely closed a chapter, it had opened a wound that refused to heal. Her death, official and final, hung like a specter over every conversation, every whispered apology, every attempt at moving on. For Will, for Elektra, and for those who had loved or hated her in equal measure, Luna's absence was not peace, it was punishment. Since the announcement that Luna had died following a miscarriage of Will's child, Los Angeles had not been the same. The air itself seemed heavier, saturated with gossip and speculation, every socialite and journalist dissecting the story as if truth could be found in the ruins of scandal. Will, the once charismatic heir of the Spencer Empire, now carried himself like a man walking through a storm without a compass. The beaches that once represented freedom now echoed with his solitude. Every crashing wave reminded him of Luna's laughter, sharp, defiant, and forever gone. He tried to build something new with Elektra, a woman whose grace had once calmed the turbulence in his soul, but grief has a way of poisoning what remains. Their home by the sea, meant to be a sanctuary, had become a museum of memories neither could escape. Luna's ghost lived between them, whispering in every silence. Meanwhile, Bill Spencer found himself facing a different kind of reckoning. For years, he had defined himself through control of his empire, his family, and his own destiny. But now, as he watched his son spiral into quiet despair, he saw in Will the same self-destructive hunger that had once ruled his own heart. It terrified him. Yet, beneath that fear burned something older, darker, a need to reclaim what had been taken from him. The recent months had drawn him unexpectedly close to Katie again, as they united in their shared purpose of helping Will survive the aftermath. For the first time in years, they sat at the same table, shared the same silences, even laughed at old memories. And in those moments, Bill was reminded that the woman he had once loved was still there beneath the scars of disappointment and mistrust. But nothing in Los Angeles comes without consequence. The intimacy rekindled between Bill and Katie had begun to blur lines that neither of them had been ready to cross. And when Forrester Creations quietly replaced Katie as head of public relations, a position she had fought tooth and nail to earn, the fragile balance between personal and professional collapsed. The news had come like a blow, unannounced and merciless, disguised in corporate language, but dripping with betrayal. Rich Forrester, citing strategic realignment, had signed off on her removal, convincing himself it was a business decision. But to Katie, it was personal. It was humiliation dressed as progress, a dismissal that cut deeper than words. When Bill found out, the old fire in him roared back to life. The same man who had built an empire through ruthless ambition now burned with something more dangerous, righteous fury. He saw Ridge's decision as an attack not just on Katie, but on everything she had rebuilt since her heartbreak. To Bill, it was proof that the Forrester men still believed they could play God with the lives of women who had once loved them. He swore he would make Ridge regret it. But beneath the surface of his anger, another truth pulsed. His renewed closeness with Katie wasn't entirely selfless. He had missed her power, her steadiness, her loyalty. She was the only person who had ever seen through the armor he wore, and the thought of losing her again filled him with something akin to fear. Katie, for her part, was torn between pride and vulnerability. Forrester had been her proving ground, the place where she fought to carve out an identity beyond being a Logan, beyond being Bill's ex-wife. She had poured her soul into that company, believing she was finally being valued for her mind rather than her name. To be replaced without warning, to be cast aside by the very people she had defended, felt like being erased. When Bill offered her a position back at Spencer Publications, she hesitated at first. It felt like a step backward, a surrender. But then she realized something. Sometimes, survival means knowing when to stop fighting battles that were never meant to be won. She accepted. And in that choice, she found both comfort and danger, for being near Bill again awakened feelings she had long buried under layers of professionalism and pride. Across town, the Forrester mansion shimmered with holiday decor, but beneath the golden lights lay shadows of their own. Ridge and Brooke were attempting peace, something fragile, tentative, and almost sacred after everything they had endured. Thanksgiving had brought them together again, a rare reprieve from the chaos. They reminisced about their long, complicated love story, about how every triumph and every heartbreak seemed to lead them back to each other. Brooke had learned to live with Ridge's contradictions, the artist and the egotist, the dreamer and the destroyer. But even as she smiled beside him, she sensed a storm brewing beyond their control. That storm took form in the most unexpected of places, Donna Logan's trembling voice as she confessed something she could no longer keep hidden. When Brooke arrived at the mansion that afternoon, she found her sister pale and agitated, pacing the living room as though she'd been rehearsing a speech she dreaded to give. Donna's eyes were red from crying. Her voice cracked when she said Eric's name. The words that followed shattered the illusion of tranquility Brooke had tried so hard to maintain. Eric's health, Donna revealed, was deteriorating again. His latest medical tests had shown alarming results, a recurrence of the condition that had nearly taken his life once before. For a long moment, Brooke said nothing. She simply stood there, watching her sister unravel under the weight of love and fear. The memory of Eric's near-death experience resurfaced, the sterile smell of hospital corridors, the beeping monitors, the collective agony of a family that had refused to let him go. Finn's groundbreaking treatment had saved him once, but now, Donna whispered, the symptoms were returning. Fatigue, tremors, confusion, it was all starting again. Brooke tried to reassure her, to promise that medicine had advanced, that miracles were possible, but her own voice faltered. Deep down, she knew that time was a ruthless thief. Donna's confession drew more than pity. It stirred something Brooke had buried for years, her guilt. Eric had always been her foundation, her mentor, her moral compass when the world tilted too far. To imagine him fading again felt unbearable. As Donna wept, Brooke held her, realizing that every triumph their family celebrated came with an unseen cost. The Forresters had built their legacy on beauty, but beauty had always demanded sacrifice. While the sisters clung to each other in sorrow, across town, another confrontation was about to ignite. Bill Spencer arrived unannounced at Forrester Creations, his fury barely restrained. Ridge was reviewing sketches when the door flew open, and Bill stormed in like a tempest in a tailored suit. The air crackled with tension. Years of rivalry, over business, over love, over Brooke herself, came roaring back with every word Bill spat. He accused Ridge of betrayal, of disrespecting Katie, of using people as pawns in his endless pursuit of control. Ridge fired back that business wasn't charity, that decisions had to be made for the greater good. But beneath his calm, his pride flared like wildfire. He hated being questioned, especially by Bill, the man who had spent years reminding him of every weakness he tried to hide. Their voices rose until the walls seemed to vibrate. Bill's words struck deep, cutting past professional decorum and straight into the heart of Ridge's identity. "You've always been a coward hiding behind family loyalty," Bill hissed, stepping closer. "You don't protect them, you suffocate them. You destroyed Katie's trust just like you've destroyed every woman who ever believed in you." Ridge's face hardened, but his silence was admission enough. For all his confidence, he couldn't deny the truth in Bill's words. Brooke arrived moments later, drawn by the echoes of raised voices. She stepped between them, her calm composure belying the storm in her chest. She understood both men too well, the pride that consumed Ridge, the possessiveness that fueled Bill. Watching them fight again felt like being trapped in a loop she could never escape. She demanded they stop, but the damage was already done. The old rivalry had been reignited, not just by love or jealousy, but by something more dangerous: purpose. Bill left that office with a vow burning in his eyes. He would make sure no one ever hurt Katie again, even if it meant tearing down the forest as brick by brick. In the days that followed, the ripple effects spread like wildfire. Eric's declining health brought the family together and simultaneously tore them apart. Donna refused to leave his side, desperate to believe he would recover as he always had. Ridge buried himself in work, using productivity as a shield against fear. Brooke oscillated between hope and despair, her strength tested once again. And through it all, Bill remained a constant presence in Katie's life, steady yet unpredictable, as though balancing between redemption and relapse. Will, too, found himself drawn into the vortex of family drama. The loss of Luna had made him colder, more withdrawn, and the more his parents tried to help, the more he resisted. He resented their attempts at control, seeing in their protectiveness a reflection of everything he had lost: freedom, love, and the illusion of innocence. His relationship with Elektra deteriorated under the strain, their shared grief turning into silent blame. Sometimes he would stand at the ocean's edge, imagining Luna's voice carried by the waves. Sometimes he almost believed she was still out there, haunting them all. By early December, Los Angeles seemed to hold its breath. Bill's confrontation with Ridge had made headlines, igniting rumors of a corporate war between Spencer Publications and Forrester Creations. The press feasted on the drama, speculating that the rivalry was not just professional, but deeply personal. Behind closed doors, Katie tried to mediate, urging Bill to let go of revenge. But Bill was not a man who forgot. He believed in justice, or at least his version of it, and he wasn't done proving that Ridge's arrogance had consequences. Then came the news that no one wanted to hear. Eric's condition worsened dramatically. Finn delivered the update in a voice devoid of its usual optimism. The new treatment wasn't working. Eric's body was rejecting it. For the first time, even Brooks saw fear in Ridge's eyes. He had built his entire identity around being his father's heir, the designer who carried the Forrester legacy forward. The thought of losing Eric meant losing not just a parent, but the compass that had guided him all his life. Donna spent sleepless nights at Eric's bedside, whispering memories, holding his hand, refusing to accept the possibility of goodbye. Brooke visited daily, finding in Donna's unwavering devotion a reflection of what true love looked like: messy, enduring, and selfless. And as she watched Ridge crumble under the weight of helplessness, she realized that for all his flaws, he too was just a man terrified of losing the one person who had always believed in him. By December 3rd, the day that would come to define everything, the emotional tension in the Forrester world had reached its breaking point. Bill stood at Spencer Publications, staring out at the city, his reflection merging with the skyline, a man caught between vengeance and redemption. Ridge sat in his office, sketching aimlessly, his mind far from fashion. Brooke waited for updates from Donna, praying for a miracle. Katie, once again, found herself torn between two forces: the man who had hurt her and the man who had never stopped fighting for her. And then it happened, Donna's call, her voice trembling through the phone. Eric had woken briefly, whispering her name. His eyes had opened, full of love, and then the monitors began to sound. Doctors rushed in. Donna's tears fell faster than words. She told Brooke everything, her voice breaking as she repeated, "He's fighting, but he's so tired." The news spread quickly, casting a shadow over every rivalry, every lingering resentment. For a moment, the battles that had consumed them all seemed meaningless compared to the fragility of a heartbeat. As night fell on Los Angeles, the city lights glittered like scattered stars. In one corner of the city, Bill sat beside Katie, holding her hand in uncharacteristic silence. In another, Ridge and Brooke stood together outside Eric's room, united by fear. Donna knelt by the bedside, whispering promises that only love could keep. And in the distance, the ocean roared, a reminder that everything, even grief, eventually returns to the tide. The next chapter of their lives would be written in the wake of loss, love, and the inevitable reckoning that follows every secret. For in the world of the bold and the beautiful, nothing truly ends. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every whispered confession is simply the beginning of another storm. And on that December night, as Donna's tears fell upon Eric's hand, and as Bill vowed to protect his family no matter the cost, the city itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for dawn, waiting for the next revelation, waiting for beauty to emerge once more from the ashes of pain. The night that the man confessed to causing Luna's fatal crash should have brought closure. For months, Steffi and Finn had been living in a state of suspended grief, haunted by unanswered questions and sleepless guilt. When the culprit finally stepped forward, his voice trembling, his words laced with remorse, it seemed, on the surface, like an ending. Yet as his confession unfolded, a strange unease crept through the room. His story didn't align. The timestamps were off, the sequence of events blurred. The only supposed witness had vanished. There were photographs missing from the police file, phone records mysteriously deleted, and a chilling absence of medical clarity in Luna's autopsy. The relief they expected never came. Instead, the confession felt like a trigger, one that released a chain reaction of suspicion, doubt, and moral decay that neither of them was prepared to confront. For Steffi, life had already been a mosaic of loss and survival. She had learned early that peace in Los Angeles was not given but earned, usually at a price. The daughter of privilege and power, she carried herself with an aura of composure that masked a lifetime of turbulence. Yet beneath the flawless surface of the Forrester heiress lay a heart still bruised by the echoes of every betrayal, every death, every secret buried for the sake of the family name. Luna's death, tragic as it was, had threatened to unravel all of it. It had forced Steffi to see her own reflection in a young woman who had wanted too much, too fast, and had paid the ultimate price for stepping into a world governed by vanity and power. So when the man confessed, Steffi felt not closure, but dread. Because if the truth didn't fit neatly, it meant there was still something out there, something waiting to destroy them. Finn, on the other hand, approached life with the moral clarity of a healer. As a doctor, truth and transparency were not just virtues, they were his foundation. But as a husband and father, his ethics became entangled with love's fierce protectiveness. When the inconsistencies in the confession began to surface, he wanted to speak up, to question, to dig. Yet each time he tried, Steffi stopped him. "We need peace," she whispered. "We've lost enough." At first, it seemed rational, compassion disguised as self-preservation. But slowly, subtly, it became a code of silence. One omitted detail in a police report. One unfiled medical document. One witness uncontacted. The omissions multiplied, each justified as a temporary measure until the world calmed down. But the world never calmed down. And Finn began to realize that peace built on deception is nothing more than the calm before collapse. The guilt began to corrode him from within. At the hospital, he found himself hesitating before signing reports, glancing at patient files with the paranoia of someone who has already crossed a line. Luna's chart, sealed and buried in the system under restricted access, appeared in his dreams. He could still hear her last words, fragmented, desperate, something about not being alone that night. There were traces of defensive wounds, injuries inconsistent with the crash pattern, and medication levels that didn't match her prescriptions. When he mentioned these to Steffi, she grew pale. "Please, Finn," she said quietly, "don't open this again. It will destroy us." Destroy us. The words became an incantation. Every time Finn wanted to tell the truth, Steffi invoked the same plea. And each time, he yielded, because the thought of losing her, of seeing their carefully rebuilt family crumble under another tragedy, was unbearable. Yet the more he protected her, the more he resented himself. His vows as a doctor clashed violently with his duties as a husband, until the boundary between right and wrong became blurred beyond recognition. Steffi, meanwhile, wore her composure like armor. Outwardly, She was the same commanding woman who ruled boardrooms and family dinners with effortless grace. But at night, when the city slept and her reflection stared back at her from the glass walls of their house, she saw the cracks forming. She had silenced her conscience for too long. Each lie, small, strategic, necessary, had grown roots in her mind. She told herself it was for the children, for Finn, for stability. Yet deep down, she knew it was also for herself. She couldn't bear to watch another version of her world collapse. Not after everything she had lost. The first true fracture came when Finn received an anonymous envelope at the hospital. Inside were 3 photographs, one of Luna's car before the crash, another of a shadowed figure pulling someone from the wreckage, and the last, blurred but unmistakable, of Luna herself, alive, lying on a stretcher, her eyes open. Finn's pulse quickened. He checked the timestamp. It was taken 30 minutes after the recorded time of death. Someone had lied. The signature at the bottom of the medical report, his own, had been altered. When he brought it home, Steffi's reaction chilled him. She didn't look shocked. She looked cornered. "We have to destroy it," she whispered. "You don't know what this could do." In that moment, Finn understood. Steffi knew more than she had ever admitted. The realization shook him. Love, he had always believed, was built on trust. But now, it felt like quicksand. Each truth he uncovered dragged him deeper into lies he never chose. He began to question everything: her late-night phone calls, her sudden disappearances, her obsession with keeping the family protected. What was she protecting them from? Or whom? Steffi wasn't oblivious to Finn's growing suspicion. She felt it in his eyes, in the way he spoke less and watched her more. Yet she could not tell him everything, not yet. The truth she carried was a weight so heavy it threatened to crush them both. After Luna's accident, Steffi had received a message from an untraceable number. "Keep quiet, or your family will pay the same price." Attached was a video clip showing the crash site from a different angle. In it, a second car appeared for a brief moment before vanishing into the darkness. The implication was clear. Luna hadn't been alone, and whoever had been with her wanted that fact erased. Steffi had done what she thought any mother would do. She protected her family first. But silence has a price. As weeks turned into months, her lie began to breathe. It grew restless, hungry, demanding more sacrifices. Finn's restlessness only fed it. The love between them, once effortless, now existed in careful fragments, stolen smiles, mechanical reassurances, the illusion of stability. The guilt they shared became an invisible third presence in their marriage, hovering at the edge of every conversation. When Luna's name resurfaced in the media, rumors of sightings, whispers of missing evidence, their facade began to crack. Reporters speculated that her case might be reopened. The police hinted at inconsistencies in the timeline. And then came the worst blow. A new forensic analysis revealed traces of another person's DNA on Luna's seatbelt, DNA that had been conveniently removed from the file months earlier. Finn couldn't take it anymore. One night, he confronted Steffi in their kitchen. The silence between them stretched to breaking. "I can't keep doing this," he said. "I can't keep lying. It's eating me alive." Steffi's response was calm but trembling. "And what happens if you tell the truth? You think the truth will set us free? It won't, Finn. It will destroy everything we've built. The kids, our home, our life, it will all go down with it." He stared at her, seeing not his wife but the daughter of Ridge Forrester, heir to a legacy of secrets buried beneath designer gowns and family portraits. The realization cut him deeply. He had fallen in love with Steffi because she was different, because she made him believe in redemption. But now, she had become the very thing she once despised, a guardian of deceit. And yet, even as resentment grew, so did his need to protect her. Love, it seemed, was not a matter of logic but of loyalty. He found himself doing things he once swore he never would, altering records, deleting files, falsifying reports. Each act pushed him further from the man he used to be. And every time he looked at Steffi, he wondered if she could see what she had turned him into. Then came the moment that shattered their fragile equilibrium. A former paramedic from the night of Luna's crash came forward, claiming he had been paid to change his testimony. He said he had seen 2 survivors that night, not one. One was Luna. The other was someone he couldn't identify, someone who fled before authorities arrived. The revelation sent shockwaves through Los Angeles. The case was reopened. And for Steffi and Finn, the walls began to close in. Brooke, ever perceptive, noticed the tension immediately. She had lived long enough to recognize the signs of a marriage on the edge. She tried to reach out to Steffi, to remind her that secrets have a way of devouring even the strongest hearts. But Steffi, too far gone in her resolve, pushed her away. "You don't understand," she said, her voice cold. "This isn't about right or wrong. It's about survival." Finn, however, could no longer live with that justification. When he was summoned by the police for a follow-up statement, he faced the ultimate test. The questions were simple, direct. Did he notice anything unusual that night? Were there inconsistencies in the medical timeline? Did he personally confirm Luna's death? His pulse hammered. Steffi's voice echoed in his mind. "We need peace. We've lost enough." He hesitated, long enough for his silence to speak louder than any confession. From that point, their marriage became a battlefield. Steffi accused him of betrayal, of weakness. Finn accused her of manipulation, of valuing reputation over conscience. Every word between them became a wound. And through it all, Luna's shadow loomed larger, her name spoken in hushed tones, her absence now an accusation. When Luna, or someone claiming to be Luna, was finally seen alive, everything collapsed. The footage leaked online. A woman matching Luna's description leaving a clinic in Northern California, her face partly obscured, her movements hesitant but purposeful. The world erupted. Was she alive all along? Had someone faked her death? Or had Steffi and Finn covered up something far worse than negligence? The pressure became unbearable. The media circled like vultures. The Forrestos distanced themselves, and even their children sensed the shift in the air, the quiet tension of a home suffocating under unspoken truths. Finn moved out temporarily, telling himself it was for clarity, but the emptiness in the house was unbearable. Steffi spent nights pacing, staring at the ocean, wondering whether the waves could wash away sins as easily as footprints. In the end, truth found them, as it always does. Luna's reappearance was not the miracle the world believed. It was the reckoning Steffi had feared. She returned not as the woman they remembered, but as someone transformed, her eyes cold with knowledge no one wanted unearthed. The secrets of that night, the lies they told, the evidence they destroyed, it all surfaced. And when Steffi looked into Luna's face, she saw not forgiveness, but the reflection of her own guilt staring back. Finn's confession came first. He couldn't live with it anymore. He told the police everything, every omission, every falsified report, every choice made in the name of love. The fallout was catastrophic. His medical license was suspended, the Forrester name dragged through the headlines once again. But for Finn, it was liberation. For Steffi, it was ruin. The peace she had sacrificed so much for crumbled into ash. Their marriage, once the picture of stability, became a monument to contradiction. Two people who loved each other enough to lie, but not enough to survive the truth. When Finn left, he didn't slam the door. He simply turned once, as if memorizing the shape of her sorrow, and said, "You wanted peace, Steffi. Now you have it." And so she did. The house fell silent. The city outside pulsed with gossip, but inside, there was only the sound of the ocean, endless, indifferent, eternal. Steffi stood by the window, her reflection merging with the horizon, realizing too late that peace built on lies is not peace at all. It is a pause between storms. Months later, when Luna's story became public, the truth, the conspiracies, the manipulation, Los Angeles moved on, as it always did. But for Steffi and Finn, there was no moving on. Their love had been a bridge between worlds, truth and deceit, compassion and survival, and it had collapsed under the weight of both. In the end, it wasn't Luna's death that destroyed them. It was the silence that followed, and the choices they made to protect it. For in the world they lived in, the line between hero and villain was as fragile as the lives they tried to control. And sometimes, the cost of love is not losing the one you care for, but losing the person you once were in their eyes.